have a braid in my hair. But my hair is black, so you can't really see it. So, this is my first book review. Welcome! I just finished reading a really good book, and I have to say it was phenomenal. Let me tell you what it is. I just finished reading The Once and Future King by T.H. White. This is a book that is compiled of 4 books, actually, technically. It's the full story of King Arthur and his knights, and a bunch of their adventures and other nonsense, and about love, it's about friendship, it's about justice, it's about right and wrong, it's about war. This book is jam-packed with unbelievable goodies. But it's 4 books. It's The Sword and the Stone is the first book, which is the tale of King Arthur as a boy, as a child, growing up, not knowing that he is the future king, but he'll find out soon enough. The next book is The Queen of Air and Darkness. That one is about a queen who is not so good. Next is The Ill-Made Knight, which focuses primarily on Lancelot and Guinevere, and I'm sure it's no spoiler, their romance. And then the last book is called The Candle in the Wind, which kind of wraps everything up. Barking dog. Anyway, this book was amazing. It put me through so much. Literally so much. I can't even begin to tell you how many different things I felt through reading this entire book. It's imaginative. It's just so creative. It's his mind, the way he is able to construct a brand new version of an old legend without tampering the original story is pure wonderfulness. It's very fantastical, but it still has such a reality to it, which I was not expecting. There's just so much humanity in each of the stories amongst all of this fairy tale world. Yeah, the story itself, the whole story, just one book with 4 stories. I was sad. I got mad so many times. I got so mad at so much that was going on. Several of the characters, as well as so many of the characters, as well as situations, circumstances, choices. I was like, what the freak? It was frustrating. I got so hopeful. There was so much hope in the story and so much relief. There were moments where I was like, oh, thank the Lord. Things worked out. And just all the time. It's constant. It's not so much of it's tearing you apart to where you're feeling emotionally unstable as much as just really empathize. And I don't know why, but I was really surprised by that for most all the characters. And at the end, once I finished it, I bawled. I was crying like a crocodile who was actually crying from a stubbed scale, or I don't know. I was crying. I cried so much at the end of it for so many different reasons. It just got to me. It really got to me. I loved it, despite how much this book frustrated me. Can you guys hear the dog barking? What was I saying? I was crying. Yes, by the end of the book, despite how upset so many things made me in the story, once it was finished, I was just devastated feeling. I couldn't stop crying. Literally couldn't stop crying. I felt so connected. And the book, I read through 4 books in one, and after reading all that, you just feel like it shouldn't be ending. There must be more. But it ends, and it got me. I personally am much more of an Arthur fan. I don't know what the popular vote is, if you will, but I don't really enjoy Lancelot that much. Really not Guinevere that much either. But Arthur, I love Arthur. He is one of my favorite characters in this world. And yeah, he's awesome. He's great. He's such an amazing character with so much development, so much growth, especially seeing him as a child grow into the king, and this king who changes the world. I know it's fiction, but still, he changes so much. And he's a hero. He's noble, he's just, he's gentle, he's kind, but he's still a great king. He knows how to rule his people, how to reach out to his people, how to talk to everyone individually, and he knows his people. He strives to know them, and he's so easy to teach. Like, his relationship with Merlin is irreplaceable. It's touching, this tutor-pupil relationship they have, and just seeing the bond they create. It grows past being a teacher into a friendship, and seeing how they work together. I won't give too much away, but like Arthur having to eventually like make his own decisions. You just like feel his pain when he wants or desires Merlin's advice or wisdom, but knows that this is a time for him to do things on his own and use what he's learned. And I think we've all had some kind of similar longing like that before, I would think. But this book just made me really cheer for Arthur. Yay, Arthur. I think he's great. He's one of the most heroic classic literature characters I can think of. Just how selfless he is. He has everything at his fingertips, and he's just so selfless and loving and great. Who wouldn't love Arthur? I think that's why I don't enjoy Lancelot or Guinevere as much, because how they betray him and hurt him, that's not cool. No, I don't approve. I don't like it. And besides that, I just don't think their characters are that praiseworthy. My opinion. Nevertheless, this book does talk a lot about Lancelot and Guinevere. So for anyone out there who hurrahs them, The Ill-Made Knight, which is the third book of The Once and Future King, focuses primarily on Lancelot and Guinevere, and it's one of the longer books, which got old for me. There wasn't enough Arthur in The Once and Future King for me, which again might sound biased because I'm an Arthur fan, but he's mostly in Book 1 and Book 4, The Sword in the Stone and The Candle in the Wind. The other two, Book 2, The Queen of Air and Darkness, focuses mostly on Gawain, Agravain, and their family, their brothers and their two other brothers. The Orkney faction, I believe is what they call themselves, which is a really interesting book. It's one of the more, I think, fantasy-driven ones. But Book 3, The Ill-Made Knight, is mostly about Guinevere and Lancelot. And it's one of the longer ones, as I said. But it has a lot of stories within it that's about the other knights and bits and pieces about Arthur. But my favorites were definitely The Sword in the Stone and The Candle in the Wind, because it is about Arthur. And seeing his beginning and then the end of the story, and just how much growth, how much development, how much has happened between Book 1 and Book 4, it's indescribable. You'll have to read it. The only things I would say about this book, if you're not like a big reader or a classic literature person, it gets really wordy. There are definitely times where Mr. White was taking his time describing things or allowing plot points to happen, which is fine. I enjoyed it, but I just don't know that everybody would. Give it a try. See for yourself. As a whole, though, it's interesting. I mean, you can't really deny that. It's interesting. And as with all and any good stories, I wanted more. When it ended, I was in denial. I went through a good, long session of disbelief. Yeah, I wanted a lot more. I just didn't want it to end. Oh, I was just, yeah, and I was retching and straining. I was freaking out because I just couldn't believe it was over. I felt like I'd been through so much with all of them. I was just like, no, this can't be it. There must be more. I wanted more. And that's always a good thing, I think. When it comes to a good book, that's always a good thing. One more thing. I have read The Sword and the Stone twice now. I read it out of The Once and Future King, and I also read The Sword and the Stone on its own. I had this copy, The Sword and the Stone, before I had The Once and Future King, and I read this a few years ago, and just recently, reading The Once and Future King for the first time, I had to reread the first book, which is The Sword and the Stone. I noticed, though, I don't know if it's like this with every copy, but I noticed within The Once and Future King, the version of The Sword and the Stone was abridged a little bit, and I don't know why. I tried to do some research on if there was supposed to be differences or anything like that, but I couldn't find any information about why that is. So just heads up, if you want to read more of The Sword and the Stone, if you pick it up, you might want to find an individual copy. It has just more to it. That's all there is, just a little bit more to it. In The Sword and the Stone, which I think is really cool, Robin Hood makes an appearance. And again, I don't want to give too much away, but it's... Oh, I love it! I love Robin Hood so much. Robin Hood makes an appearance, and his whole band, Maid Marian, and I think that's really awesome, how he crosses stories. You have to read it. Sherwood Forest. Those are my thoughts. That's how I felt about it. I loved it. I thought it was so good. I will definitely want to read this again. So, that's it. It's a good book, you guys. I bawled. Have I mentioned how much I cried? It's really good. I highly recommend it. To anyone who loves fantasy, if you even just like the King Arthur story, whether you've seen movies or just heard bits and pieces of legends and myths and his knights, give it a go. It's so good. Read it. That's it. That's all I have. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll have another book review for you next week on another book that I'm reading, and we'll keep going from there. Thanks for watching and listening and stuff. There you have it. Thanks. Keep reading. They're so good. Pardon me. I'm actually going to read a passage to you guys just to give you a taste of his writing style. He's so creative and so intelligent, and just the blend, they fuse together so flawlessly. So I'm going to read you a little bit from The Sword and the Stone. The boy slept well in the woodland nest where he had laid himself down in that kind of thin but refreshing sleep which people have when they begin to lie out of doors. At first he only dipped below the surface of sleep and skimmed along like a salmon in shallow water, so close to the surface that he fancied himself in air. He thought himself awake when he was already asleep. He saw the stars above his face, whirling on their silent and sleepless axis, and the leaves of the trees rustling against them, and he heard small changes in the grass. These little noises of footsteps and soft-fringed wing beats and stealthy bellies drawn over the grass blades or rattling against the bracken at first frightened or interested him, so that he moved to see what they were, but never saw, then soothed him, so that he no longer cared to see what they were, but trusted them to be themselves, and finally left them altogether as he swam down deeper and deeper, nuzzling into the scented turf, into the warm ground, into the unending waters under the earth.